All right, so today we are diving into something I've seen online, and I think it's something that a lot of people are talking about, this term Haddadia.
Yes.
It's being used to describe certain people involved in Islamic scholarship.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's just a ton of confusion around what it even means.
Right.
You know, where it came from, even if it's accurate.
Yeah, you see it everywhere.
And it feels like it's one of those things where a label gets used so much that people just start to think it's real.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what to believe.
Yeah. Especially online when everything spreads so fast.
Exactly.
So that's why we're going to take a deep dive today into an article by Sheikh Mohammed bin Shams al-Din.
Okay.
He's really addressing this Haddadia issue, and what he's saying is actually pretty surprising.
Interesting.
So to start off, Sheikh Mohammed says that the term Haddadia doesn't even appear in any classical Islamic texts
Oh, wow.
about different schools of thought or sects.
So he's saying it's not a historical group.
Yeah, he's saying this is like a modern invention.
That makes you wonder where it came from then.
Right.
And why are people using it now?
Yeah, and according to Sheikh Mohammed, it can be traced back to Sheikh Rabi al-Madkhali.
Okay.
And he used it to describe his former colleague, Sheikh Mahmud al-Haddad, after they had a disagreement.
So it started as a way to refer to one specific person,
It seems like it, yeah.
but now it's being applied to a whole group.
That's what it looks like. And to make it even more complicated, Sheikh Rabi actually outlined 13 characteristics
Oh, wow.
that he believes define this Haddadia group.
I see. So it's not just a name. It's like he's trying to define
Right, he's attaching all these beliefs
this label.
and behaviors to it.
Yeah, which can be problematic, you
Right.
know, because when you start doing that, it's like creating a stereotype,
Exactly.
and that might not reflect what these people actually believe.
Exactly. And some of these characteristics that he's associating with Haddadia are pretty intense.
Like what?
So, for example, he says that they really strongly dislike contemporary Salafi scholars. And he says that they believe anyone committing a bid'ah, which is basically any innovation in religious matters, should be declared an apostate.
That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, bid'ah is an important concept.
Right. And to say that someone's committing bid'ah is a big deal because it implies that they're going against the core of Islam.
Exactly, like they're straying from the Prophet's teachings.
Right.
And it could cause a lot of division
Absolutely.
in the Muslim community. And it gets even more serious because Sheikh Rabi also claims that this Haddadia group is against offering prayers
Really?
for those who are deemed to have committed bid'ah, and he even accuses them of aggression and violence towards other Salafists.
Wow. So those are some serious accusations.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that this is just one side of the story.
Right. We haven't heard the other side yet.
And that's where Sheikh Mohammed's article gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because he doesn't just sit back and let these accusations stand.
So what does he do?
He actually goes point by point and addresses each of the 13 characteristics that Sheikh Rabi laid out.
He's not letting these claims go unchallenged.
No, he's not. And I think it's a really important point because he's not just defending himself and his own group. He's challenging this whole idea of using labels to stop dialogue and understanding.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you think, right?
Definitely.
Like, how much power are we giving to these labels?
Exactly.
Are they helping us get closer to the truth?
Or are they just causing more confusion?
And division.
That's a great question. And it's something that we're going to explore even more in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
So stay tuned because we're going to get even deeper into this. So we've seen that this term Haddadia is causing quite a stir, and Sheikh Mohammed is definitely not backing down from this label that's being put on him and others. But what I found really interesting is how he takes it a step further. He's not just defending himself. He's making us think about, why are we so quick to label people in the first place?
Yeah, it's like he's calling out this intellectual laziness,
Wow.
Instead of really engaging with the different viewpoints and complexities,
Yeah.
it's easier to just, slap a label on someone and dismiss them.
It's like you're saying, I already know everything I need to know about you because you're a Haddadia.
Exactly. And that shuts down any real conversation or understanding.
Right. And it prevents any possibility of actually connecting on a deeper level.
And we see this all the time,
Yeah.
Not just in religious discussions, but in politics, on social media, even in our own personal relationships.
It's like we can't help but categorize things and put them in boxes.
Right.
It helps us make sense of the world, but it can also lead to a lot of oversimplification and harmful stereotypes.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's so important what Sheikh Mohammed's doing here. He's challenging us to really be more thoughtful and nuanced in the way we approach these discussions.
He's saying, let's go back to genuine scholarship.
Right.
Let's have respectful dialogue.
Let's be open to different perspectives.
And I think there's also this call for intellectual humility.
Oh, absolutely.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that there's always more to learn.
And, sometimes those differences of opinion, they can actually lead to really productive conversations.
Exactly. Disagreement doesn't have to equal division.
Right. It can be an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding.
So this deep dive, I think, is a great reminder for all of us to be careful about the information we come across online.
Especially with how fast things spread.
Right.
We really need to be more discerning.
Yeah.
Dig a little deeper, investigate. Where are these terms coming from? What are the implications?
And think about those labels that are used to misrepresent people or even demonize them.
Absolutely. We should never just accept things at face value.
Especially when it comes to these sensitive topics.
Right.
It's like Sheikh Muhammad's article is showing us how these labels can be used in really harmful ways. But he doesn't just stop at critiquing those labels.
Yeah.
He actually goes through and dismantles each of those 13 characteristics.
Point by point.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, okay, you want to define us. Let's see if these labels actually hold up.
Exactly. So let's take a closer look at a few examples.
Okay.
So Sheikh Rabi claims that Haddadia have this intense hatred for contemporary Salafi scholars. He even compares them to figures who were very controversial within the Salafi community.
I see.
But Sheikh Muhammad denies this completely.
He does.
And he emphasizes that you can have disagreements and different opinions without resorting to hatred.
Right. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Exactly. And another characteristic that Sheikh Rabi attributes to Haddadia is this belief that anyone committing a bid'ah should be labeled an apostate.
Which is a huge accusation.
Yeah, and as we talked about earlier, that carries a lot of weight in Islamic thought.
It does.
But Sheikh Muhammad pushes back on this as well.
How so?
He says that his group does take bid'ah very seriously.
Okay.
But they don't believe it automatically makes someone an apostate.
So he's emphasizing the need for nuance.
Yeah, and understanding that there can be different interpretations.
Right, within the boundaries of Islam.
Exactly. And then there's this allegation that Haddadia condones aggression and violence towards other Salafists.
Which, again, a very serious accusation.
Definitely. And Sheikh Muhammad completely rejects this.
He does.
He says that his group advocates for peaceful dialogue and respectful disagreement.
Even when there are major differences of opinion.
Exactly. And he challenges the evidence that's being presented for these allegations.
He's basically saying, don't just believe everything you hear.
Right.
Verify the information before you accept it as truth.
So these are just a few examples, but they show how Sheikh Muhammad is systematically going through and really dismantling this label of Haddadia.
He's not just saying we're not Haddadia.
Right.
He's showing how this label doesn't represent what they believe or how they practice.
Exactly. And I think this also highlights the power of individual voices.
Absolutely.
In challenging misinformation.
Sheikh Muhammad's not just passively accepting this label that's being forced on him.
Yeah, he's speaking out.
He's using his platform to set the record straight.
And he's providing a counter-narrative.
It's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to speak up.
Especially when we see injustice or misinformation.
And especially when it's targeting marginalized groups,
Silence can be really damaging.
It can be seen as agreement.
And by speaking out and challenging those narratives,
we can help create a more just and informed world.
And what's really striking is how Sheikh Muhammad brings together his own personal experiences.
Yeah.
His deep knowledge of Islamic scholarship and this call for intellectual responsibility.
Right. It's not just an academic exercise.
No, it's deeply personal.
Yeah.
And he's pleading for fairness and understanding.
It's a reminder that words have power.
Labels matter.
And the way we engage with ideas
can have a real impact on individuals and communities.
So we've seen how Sheikh Muhammad is pushing back against this label of Haddadia, but there's still this question of why is this label being used in the first place?
What purpose does it serve?
And that's something we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
We've spent all this time talking about Haddadia, tracing it back to that disagreement and how it's become this label used to categorize people. But the part that really got me thinking was when Sheikh Muhammad just steps back and asks, why are we even doing this? Why are we playing this labeling game?
Yeah, he says that using labels like this,
it's
a sign of intellectual weakness.
Oh, really?
Yeah, instead of having these, meaningful debates and really wrestling with these complex ideas and different opinions,
Right.
it's just easier to label someone and dismiss them.
It's like saying, I don't even need to listen to you because you're a Haddadia, end of story.
Exactly. You've already put them in a box.
Yeah, and that box is closed.
It prevents any real understanding.
And we see this everywhere, right? It's not just in religion.
No, absolutely.
It's in politics, in the news, on social media.
It's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We like to categorize things.
It makes us feel like we understand the world.
Right. But it can also lead to those oversimplifications and those harmful stereotypes.
Yeah, and I think Sheikh Mohammed is really urging us to fight against that, to be more thoughtful.
More nuanced
Yeah.
in how we approach these conversations.
He's calling for a return to real scholarship,
Rigorous research.
respectful dialogue,
Yeah, being willing to grapple with these different viewpoints.
and having that intellectual humility to realize we don't know everything.
Exactly. There's always something more to learn.
And sometimes you learn the most from those who disagree with you.
Exactly. Those can be the most fruitful conversations.
So I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
Sheikh Mohammed's article is this reminder to be critical of the labels we see,
Right. Don't just accept them.
to really try to understand where they come from,
And engage in those respectful dialogues.
even when we have strong differences of opinion.
It's a call for all of us to be, more thoughtful,
Right.
more nuanced.
Like compassionate.
Yeah, and how we interact with each other, both online and offline.
And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Haddadia.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We hope this has sparked some new insights and encouraged you to think critically about the labels we use and the power that they hold.